Many of the national media folks out there would have you believe that Jameis Winston is not the quarterback you think he is here in New Orleans, but there are those who have covered him closely for multiple years from the local angle and the local perspective that can tell you this ain't the same Jameis Winston that you saw in Tampa Bay. We got all that and a little bit of lanyard for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? Welcome into another episode of Locked On Saints, your daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much as always for making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day every day. Don't forget that we're free and available on all podcast apps and on YouTube as well. And I'm your host, Ross Jackson, at Ross Jackson Nola on Twitter, your New Orleans Saints expert, credentialed member of the media, CrescentCitySports.com, USA Today Saints Wire, Tuesdays on Locked On NFL, and here with you every single Monday through Friday on Locked On Saints. And today's episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by our friends over at Bet Online, your number one source for all your sports wagering needs. More odds, lines, and props than ever before. Bet Online, where the game starts. On today's episode, we're going to take a look at a super in-depth preview with the Atlanta Falcons game on the way for the New Orleans Saints this Sunday. We're going to take a look at Chris Olave and the New Orleans Saints wide receiver room and how that changes everything for not only the New Orleans Saints, but Jameis Winston as well. And, of course, discuss Jameis Winston. And to help us do that all today, we're going to be joined by Pro Football Focus's Trevor Sikkema, who, of course, once covered Jameis Winston in Tampa Bay for Pewter Report. So he has a really good understanding of why this Jameis Winston is different than the one in years past. All right, everybody, we are joined today for this special bonus episode of Locked On Saints. Yes, Trevor, you get your own episode, buddy. You get your own episode for this one. So we are joined by host and analyst, NFL analyst over at Pro Football Focus. And if I'm going to be honest, just good friend of mine at this point, Trevor Sikkema at Tampa Bay Trey on Twitter. Trevor, thanks so much for taking the time to come through, man.
Wow, my own episode.
You get the whole episode, dude.
I didn't know that. I dressed up a little bit better if that would have been the case. But no, Ross, it's always good to chat with you, man. It's always good to share the radio waves with you, if you will. So I appreciate you having me on.
Oh, 100%, dude. It is an honor and a pleasure. And don't worry about dressing up to come here at Locked On Saints. If people have been paying attention to the Ultimate Pro Football Preview 2022 that's been rolling along, I kind of pre-recorded a lot of that. So Monday through Friday, exact same clothes. So, you know, it happens. It bees like that sometimes. So don't even worry about all that.
You're going to change the shirt.
Change the shirt out.
Illusion, you know?
I know. I wanted people to see I was grinding on a Monday. You know what I'm saying?
Stacking them up every day.
Oh, Trevor, I appreciate you so much for coming through, man. I know there's the new daily show over at PFF that I'd love to hear a little bit more about, but I want to highlight here saying that you gave a record prediction for the New Orleans Saints that I think you're probably pretty excited to share here on Locked On Saints.
Yeah, so we just had our final record prediction show that we did right before the season's getting kicked off, and I have the Saints going 10-7. I have them being a playoff team, and I only had the Buccaneers one game better than them at 11-6 winning that division. So I think it's going to be really tight at the top. I still think Tampa's going to eke it out just because let's face it, I trust Tom Brady more than I trust Jameis Winston.
Sure.
But I think it's going to be close, man. I think the Saints are going to be a very competitive team. They've got similar coaches. They improved their roster in a lot of great ways. So 10-7, man, I definitely think that this is a playoff team, whether they're going to win the South or whether it's as a wild card team. I think they're going to be playing meaningful football in January.
I love that you brought in the comparison right there between the New Orleans Saints and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, because you have a lot of experience covering the Buccaneers. Look at the Twitter handle, Tampa Bay Trey. When you look at, so you spent time covering Jameis Winston. And while I don't think it's a hot take at all to say that you trust Tom Brady more than Jameis Winston, I think you could plug any quarterback into that conversation. I am curious about what you think in terms of the growth of Jameis Winston. Is this a different Jameis Winston in New Orleans than what you saw in Tampa?
Yeah, so the change of scenery was always going to be necessary, right? I mean, like even going back to his Florida State days, Jameis was just this gunslinger kind of a quarterback. And Jimbo Fisher, when he was at Florida State, really just let Jameis let it fly. He really did. And I think that you saw that 40-10 touchdown to interception season when they won the Heisman and the national championship. And then they were almost undefeated through that next season after that. Just so much success doing that, just like doing what he naturally was doing. And he gets to Tampa, and although it's a different city, it's still in the state of Florida. A lot of that mindset is the same. A lot of the fans, the friends, the environment is still the same. And so that is what Jameis was in Tampa Bay. And he had a couple of different offensive coordinators, a couple of different coaches with him, but he still remained that guy.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really think that we were going to see that change from Jameis until he changed scenery. And I didn't know where that was going to be. It ends up being in New Orleans. Of course, I didn't think that it was going to be Jameis subbing out for Tom Brady. But, even if the Bucs re-signed him, I wasn't sure that this change in identity, this growth that he was going to need, going from a reckless gunslinger to a quarterback that you can more depend on, be more efficient, get more of those big time throws and not as many as those turnover worthy plays. I didn't think that was going to happen in Tampa. So he goes to New Orleans, and I think he goes to a great spot. He goes to an experienced coaching staff, but also one that's going to let him be him. And I think last year you saw in the limited games that we were able to see of him as a starter, that ratio of big time throws to turnover worthy plays in our metrics at PFF was as good as it's ever been for Jameis Winston. And so there's certainly reason to believe you got a good offensive line in front of you. You got a good offensive weapon in the backfield in Alvin Kamara. And now you've got receivers, Michael Thomas coming back, Chris Olave, you've got Jarvis Landry. That's a really good group. And there's certainly reason to believe that the best of Jameis Winston from an efficiency standpoint is going to be there in 2022. And so even though I didn't really think it was going to happen in Tampa, and even though we are still going to get gunslinger Jameis every now and then, there is reason to believe that he is a matured passer at this point in his career.
Yeah, and ideally for the New Orleans Saints, the big thing is not to rely on gunslinger Jameis Winston to win games, right? Not to force him into that position. So the idea of the defense that's on the opposite side of the ball, that becomes a huge piece where you've got, guys like Cam Jordan, Demario Davis, they add Tyrann Mathieu this offseason. I assume, looking at Jameis Winston's track record, having a defense like what the New Orleans Saints have, not that they weren't building a defense in Tampa for him, it just kind of finished after he was gone. The New Orleans Saints are providing him with something that hopefully will put him in situations where he doesn't even have to tap in to that gunslinger mentality on a week by week basis. Every now and then it's going to pop off because you need to come back from behind or something goes wrong or whatever. But to not force him into those situations, I assume will make a big difference for him as well.
Yeah, 100%. And quarterbacks, especially young quarterbacks, often take the identity of their coaches, right? Early on in their career. And in Tampa, he started with Lovie Smith, but that didn't last very long.
Right.
The main coaches that he had were Todd Monken and Dirk Cutter. Those guys are push it down the field,
right?
Gunslinger. We're going to score a lot of points in a vertical passing offense. And so they were just asking so much of Jameis in that passing game. And a decent amount of it was because that defense was nowhere where it needed to be. And that is another reason but why people are having faith like, Jameis has never had this kind of a defense. I'd agree to that. I would totally agree to that as somebody who covered those early Jameis days in Tampa. He has not had a defense like he's going to have in New Orleans. And so I think that might be something that could ease his mind to think that he doesn't have to throw his arm out to win every single game. And we'll see if that devil on his shoulder is loud or quiet, depending on when he is looking at certain different in-game situations. But I think it'll be a fun one, and I do think that it will be a good year for Jameis, as I have predicted with them making.
I'm gonna be really curious to see not only like the devil on Jameis Winston's shoulder, but I'm curious about the devil on Dennis Allen's shoulder and when it starts to creep up, and if it starts to creep up for him as well, because we know that Sean Payton has no problem being conservative, enforcing a conservative offense, right? Staying close to the line of scrimmage, attacking laterally as opposed to vertically. All these things that New Orleans Saints have been predicated on mostly since 2018, but have been a part of their offense since 2006. I'm curious where Dennis Allen's kind of devil creeps up every now and then, like, let's take a shot downfield. Let's do it. You know what I mean?
Right. No, it's, I mean, these are all the conversations, right? And even though Sean Payton's not there, a lot of some of his identity is going to be
100%
within the coaches that still remain, right? I mean, Carmichael's been there for forever as well.
Yep.
So, I mean, you get into these situations where sometimes it just looks too good, and he might say like, hey, we're at home, we got the crowd behind us, take a shot here.
Yeah.
And maybe, and I think that certainly Jameis, when you look back to the final years and games of Drew Brees, it's going to be different, right? Because Drew Brees was able to stay on script a lot better. Drew Brees and what his arm limitations were kind of made it more advantageous to be more of a horizontal offense instead of a vertical offense. Jameis is not that. So how much temptation will both of those guys have is an interesting question going into the year.
All right, y'all, coming up next, Trevor and I break down the New Orleans Saints' new look wide receiver core, what it means for the New Orleans Saints, and of course, for Jameis Winston. Before we get to that, I get a good opportunity here to tell you about our friends over at LinkedIn. And of course, LinkedIn Jobs, which was voted by small businesses as the #1 destination when it comes to the job search, because they make everything nice and easy for you, making sure that you're delivering, or that they're delivering quality candidates well better than the leading competitors out there. And there are some easy ways that they help you make sure that you're able to talk to exactly the candidates that you're looking to talk to, whether it be by creating a free job post in minutes and reaching over 810 million LinkedIn professional users, or simply being able to, when you post a job, add a little purple hashtag hiring kind of frame to your profile photo to help you make sure you're spreading the word about the job that you have open and the opportunities open at your company, whether small or large. You want to make sure you're firing on all cylinders. LinkedIn Jobs is the way to do that. LinkedIn Jobs is going to help you make sure that you're able to discuss and talk to the candidates that you want to talk to faster. Did you know that every week about 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn Jobs? That's outstanding. That's how many guaranteed dollars are in Eric McCoy's new contract. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. Once again, that's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, everybody, we're continuing on here with Trevor Sikkema of Pro Football Focus at Tampa Bay Trey on Twitter. Trevor, we just kind of talked about the desire to go downfield. And not only do you have Jameis Winston in this New Orleans Saints offense now, but you also have Chris Olave, who kind of gives you that vertical threat as well that might maybe tempt you into taking some more of those shots downfield. Looking at Chris Olave, you also mentioned the return of Michael Thomas, the addition of Jarvis Landry this offseason. How much has this New Orleans Saints wide receiver core changed from your perspective from what they put on the field last year?
Oh, I mean, it's night and day, and everybody knows that it's night and day. Certainly getting Michael Thomas back alone is going to help them a lot. It's a guy who's led the NFL in receiving, and, 3-4 years ago, if you were drafting Michael Thomas in fantasy football, it was like a guaranteed 20 points every single week.
100%.
An unbelievable machine. And I think he can still be reliable in that regard. And look, even the people who might look at Michael Thomas and say, okay, he's more of a quick hit, short to intermediate possession kind of a wide receiver, that might have been seen as a diss previously when the Saints didn't really have a reliable deep threat, but now they do. Mm-hmm. So now you're almost saying okay, Michael Thomas, do what you do best. I think that Michael Thomas can be more of a vertical receiver than people give him credit for, but you can still play him in his comfort zone a lot because of how much faith I would have in Chris Olave to be able to step on the field. Something that I really loved about Olave at Ohio State, not just last year, but since his sophomore year that he was really playing for the Buckeyes, is he was so great at tracking the ball deep, which I think is an art, right? Mm-hmm. It's one thing to have the speed to get down there and the separation from defenders when you get down at the safety level, 30-ish, 40 yards down the field. It's another thing to be able to look over your shoulder, have a knack for where the ball is coming in, and being able to corral it at some really awkward body angles. Mm-hmm. I feel like Olave, that is such a underrated part of what makes him a great deep receiver, right? People will talk about the smoothness of his speed. They'll talk about him getting off the line of scrimmage. They'll talk about the separation ability he has, but catching over the shoulder or flipping the shoulder to the other side when the ball's actually going the other way and still being able to corral it, all that stuff, that concentration all goes into being how great of a reliable deep threat you are. And I have a lot of high hopes for Chris Olave to be that kind of a player in the offense. Jarvis Landry is somebody who I've really enjoyed throughout his NFL career. Look, I think that it gets out of hand as everything gets out of hand in the NFL, right? Mm-hmm. A guy does something good, and then somebody recognizes it and says, oh, Jarvis Landry's pretty good. And then the next guy has to up that take, and they go, well, I actually think that Jarvis Landry is a top 20 receiver in the NFL. Mm-hmm. And then somebody has to one-up that take, and they go, well, I actually think Jarvis Landry is a top 10 wide receiver. And then all of a sudden, you've got the people who are forced to say, no, Jarvis Landry actually stinks because the hype is way out of control. Jarvis has always been this guy who is just a reliable, over-the-middle, great slot receiver who is just kind of a security blanket for quarterbacks. That's fine. That's great.
That's great.
Part of an offense. And I think for Jameis Winston especially, if Jarvis can, not slow down and show that he's still that same guy that we've seen over the last 3 or 4 years when he's healthy, that's all of a sudden a really great complementary trio of wide receivers. And that's not even to mention one of the best backfield threats in the receiving game in the NFL in Alvin Kamara.
Just to go back to your point real quick on Chris Olave and his tracking ability, as someone who just recently played in the media flag football game for New Orleans media in the Superdome, I can attest that my tracking ability is trash, absolute trash. And so it is not easy to do.
You got to play flag football in the Superdome?
Yes, it was dope. It was awesome. That's awesome. I got hurt and it was worth it. I mean, I knew I was. Look, I'm 32 years old. I sit down, I write for a living, and I talk into a microphone. Don't nobody need me running around on turf. Okay, don't nobody need that. But
you're a once a year guy.
That's exactly it. I'm training now for this time next year to be able to play 3 quarters. So the next piece for Chris Olave, but like seriously, in terms of like that tracking ability, indoor stadiums, it's so funny to like be able to speak to this now, but like indoor stadiums, it's hard to track through the lights of a stadium like the Superdome, for instance, and be able to do what it is that Chris Olave does without effort, let alone do it outdoors, potentially with the sun in your eyes and like all these other things. Like Chris Olave does have a special ability to be able to do that. One of the other things that we've seen from him that is special, that feels like a very veteran kind of experience thing that he's already got under his belt, is he knows how to work with the play flow of a scramble drills, all those things. He has been outstanding with that over in the preseason. Is that something that you saw from him in college as well? Because it certainly translated in the NFL.
Yeah, he's just a smart wide receiver, right? And it's scouting is very detailed. There's so many things that you have to pay attention to. You want to look at how flexible a guy is, how athletic he is, how explosive he is. You want to look at his reaction time. You want to talk about separation, his success versus man and zone, and like all these things, they're measurements, like everything. There's so many things to get down with scouting. But there are sometimes guys when you just watch me go, it's a natural athlete. Dude just gets it. He just understands it. And Chris Olave, to me, has always been one of those wide receivers over the last couple of years that I've watched him in college where I've been like, dude gets it. You don't get on the field as a sophomore at Ohio State, that receiver room, if you're not just a natural at what you do. And I think that that's always been the best way to me to describe Chris Olave, is that he is just a natural. He makes it look smooth, but he makes it look fast at the same time. He's reliable. He knows how to find the ball. He knows how to find the soft spots. And like you mentioned, when things don't go on script and he's running his route and all of a sudden Jameis is scrambling in the wrong direction or whatever it is, you know what he does? He stops where he's at and he goes, okay, the best play here is actually for me to go this direction, not to continue my route here. And he gets it. Football IQ is such an important part of the game. No matter what position you're playing, the more you have it, the more natural you look. And I think that Chris Olave is one of the smartest young receivers that we have in the league. And I certainly think that that's going to show up, and I hope it does, because he's a great talent.
This is a tough question to ask because obviously 250 plus players get drafted in each year's NFL draft. But is he one of the better, I guess I'll ask it that way, players to scheme fits that you saw in the draft this year? So
you're saying like a versatile guy, like he could do a lot of different things.
Like he could do a lot of different things, but I mean like him landing in the New Orleans Saints offense in particular, that fit for him.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful. Like I think that the New Orleans fit was fantastic, and you can start just by first and foremost who the quarterback's going to be. Because we know that Jameis is going to want to go deep. We know he's going to want to push the envelope. We know he's going to want to take the top off the defense. Who's going to do that in this offense? It's probably going to be Chris Olave. Right. But that's also a role that he has had for many years with the Buckeyes. And I think that that's when you look at what the Buckeyes offense was, especially with CJ Stroud this past year, how much they were able to push the ball down the field, what Chris Olave was able to be as an outside receiver, that transition to what you think he's probably going to do in New Orleans is pretty seamless, I believe. At least, we'll certainly see when Sunday rolls around and we get through the first couple of weeks of the season, how they're deploying him, what kind of routes he's running, those kinds of things. But in my mind, going from what we saw at Ohio State to what we should project and to see in New Orleans, that's a pretty great scheme fit. That's something where you go, yep, love the pick here, could see him succeeding right away.
All right, family, wrapping up with Trevor Sikkema here in just a moment, who's going to give you a super, super in-depth, highly analytical breakdown of why things just aren't going to work out for the Atlanta Falcons in 2022. We got that coming up for you as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints. But first, I want to tell you about our friends over at Bet Online, your number one source for all your sports wagering needs. Whether you're looking for game odds, game spreads, over-unders, player props, game props, doesn't matter. You want to pick who's going to get the first accepted penalty in this weekend's New Orleans Saints and Atlanta Falcons matchup? BetOnline has you covered. You want to pick whether or not the New Orleans Saints are going to be able to cover their 5.5-point spread? BetOnline is the place to get it done. You like the New Orleans Saints as the favorite, but want to take a shot on the Atlanta Falcons as an underdog? Get out. No, I'm just kidding. BetOnline is the place for you to be able to do that. Go and check them out today over at BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, everybody, we are wrapping up this episode of Locked On Saints with my brother in arms when it comes to the fact that if you get enough sides at the barbecue, you have a meal. So, Trevor, as we look through next with the New Orleans Saints and the Atlanta Falcons this weekend, we're starting off week one with the big rivalry game here in the NFC South, the Saints traveling to Atlanta. I have this listed as our Falcons super in-depth preview. So, super in-depth. With everything that you have over there at Pro Football Focus, what is maybe the one thing that you can tell everyone that they need to know about this matchup in terms of what to expect on Sunday?
All indications that the Falcons should stink. That is my super in-depth preview, is that by all indications, it feels like the Falcons are in for a rough 2022 season. This is a team that has pretty high odds to get a top 3 pick, maybe even the number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft. Now, I like Arthur Smith as a coach, and so I don't want to be too hard on him before the ball even gets kicked off. But there's just not a lot to hang your hat on. I mean, even some of the receiving options that they have, it's Cordell Patterson, it's Kyle Pitts, it's Drake London. These are Kyle Pitts, Drake London, younger guys. Cordell Patterson's kind of more of just a gadget, offensive weapon kind of a player. Marcus Mariota and Desmond Ridder, okay, reason to believe in him, but not solidified quarterbacks. The offensive line's not good. And then you flip over to the defensive side of the football. I got some numbers up here. When it comes to EPA per play given up, which is obviously expected points added per play, it's a way to judge how successful you are on a play-by-play basis that takes into context like down and distance, how much yards you gained, what time in the game, all that stuff. Falcons were the 3rd worst in the NFL last year, behind only the Jacksonville Jaguars and in front of only the Jacksonville Jaguars and the New York Jets. And that is with AJ Terrell on the team,
right?
Who is an unbelievable corner. And AJ Terrell had an elite coverage grade for us last year. And this was still the 3rd worst defense in terms of EPA per play against the pass. That tells you just how bad the rest of that cornerback room is, safety room, linebackers. I still don't have faith in. I know there's some young guys there. The defensive line is not where it needs to be. The Saints should have their way with the Falcons. They really will. Even if AJ Terrell plays well, given whatever his assignment is, he is one guy in that defensive back room. And I think that the Saints have too many weapons around him. And I think more importantly, the Saints are way better in both trenches, even with the loss of Teron Armstead compared to the Atlanta Falcons. So I think it's going to be Saints should roll this weekend. I know that no game in the NFL is a guarantee, but the Saints should have this one in the bag.
Yeah, it feels like if the Saints lose this game, they beat themselves, right? Like they got in their own way somehow or another, which isn't, out of the question. That happens with every NFL team. So there's a chance that happens, but it certainly feels like this is the game that they should win. And especially when you consider the fact that Deion Jones is also out of the lineup over on that defensive side. So a team that was 3rd worst in EPA losing Deion Jones in the middle of their defense, Foye Oluokun now, of course, with the Jacksonville Jaguars. So now you have a whole new group outside of Michael Walker at linebacker. It feels like the middle of the defense for Atlanta might be a place that the New Orleans Saints should be able to exploit.
100%. Absolutely. And like Deion wasn't even playing that well when he was playing last year. So it's like all of a sudden this Falcons defense has taken a turn for the worse. And whether it's middle of the field, outside of the field, basically all Jameis has to do every single play is identify where AJ Terrell is and just go anywhere else. Just throw anywhere else, and they're probably going to be open. And I think that that's going to be a successful strategy for them. Not to simplify the game of football too much. Get paid millions of dollars to actually make that happen. But honestly, it's going to be rough for Atlanta, and it doesn't start off easy going up against this the Saints offense.
One of the things I'm most curious about watching this weekend is, if Michael Thomas is able to go as I expect he'll be able to, exactly how much they're able to utilize him. But even if he's not able to go, having Jarvis Landry, having Chris Olave is obviously huge. You have a guy in Jameis Winston who's already built a connection with some of the other guys as well, in Deontay Hardy and Marquez Callaway, who were his top options last year. But now Taysom Hill is also in this sort of pass catcher role, more focused. He'll take some quarterback snaps. I'm never going to let go of that. It's going to happen more than likely. But he's mostly going to be in this sort of pass catcher role. New Orleans Saints didn't get a lot of production from their tight ends last year. Is this a game where you could see maybe the tight ends getting into rhythm, especially with the sort of inexperience at linebacker and safety for the Falcons?
Yeah, I mean, they'll have that opportunity, no doubt about it. And we touched on how questionable the Falcons are over the middle at their linebacker spots. And, when you look at Jameis's track record as well, going back to his Tampa days, they were heavy tight end offense with Cam Brate and with OJ Howard and Anthony Auclair even. They played some 13 personnel sets with 3 tight ends out there. So Jameis is certainly comfortable attacking with the tight ends. So if that ends up being part of the game plan, it's not going to be anything new for him to look that way early on, even as primary reads. So if that's an area where the Saints believe that they can exploit the Falcons the most, which might certainly be the case, given all the changes that they have at linebacker and how unreliable it feels like the safeties have been, that could be a pretty good game plan for them. Although I've got to say, if Kyle Pitts is on the other side and you've got to practice against Kyle Pitts every week in practice, you should be getting. You
should be able to do this.
It's not like tight end offenses are going to they're going to elude you in your defensive game plans. Like, they're going up against Kyle Pitts every single day in practice. So I don't think it'll take them by surprise, but maybe they still can't cover them. I'm not sure.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe all that does is make Kyle Pitts look really, really good throughout practices, as opposed to making not that he isn't already really, really good all on his own. Okay, you gave the record prediction for the New Orleans Saints 10-7. Last one for you. Do you have a score prediction that you could think up in the moment here for this game?
I will say this is 27-14.
27-14.
I'll go 27-14. Saints win. That'd be a big win as a road team.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about that now. But I'll stick with it. Those are the first numbers that came out of my head. I'm going to stick with it. 27-14. The New Orleans Saints win.
Saints traveling on Sunday to take on the Atlanta Falcons, right now favored -5.5 according to Bet Online. So even this idea here with Trevor is not that far off in terms of the way that Vegas is looking at it as well. Trevor at Tampa Bay Trey on Twitter, and of course all the phenomenal work over at Pro Football Focus, dude. Such a pleasure to be able to catch up with you. Thanks so much for coming on.
Always great talking with you, Ross. Appreciate it, man. Anytime.
All right, family, one more big thank you to Trevor Sikkema at Tampa Bay Trey on Twitter. The good buddy, good pal, coming through, spreading the good word of the New Orleans Saints. We've got more for you, but it's not going to be until after Sunday's game. Unless something big happens on Saturday, we'll get you covered there too. But don't forget to join us post-game pretty quickly after the New Orleans Saints and Atlanta Falcons wrap up on Sunday. Hopefully we'll be here celebrating a victory Monday for your New Orleans Saints. I appreciate you, as always, making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day every day for your second listen. Go ahead and make sure you're catching the end of that Ultimate Pro Football Preview 2022. And of course, you can check out Locked On Fantasy Football as well for all the last second needs that you have when it comes to setting up your fantasy lineup this weekend. Make sure that you are getting all the information that you need, whether it be through the Ultimate Pro Football Preview 2022 or 20 years of fantasy football experience with Vinny Iyer of Locked On Fantasy Football. I appreciate you, as always, for making Locked On Saints a part of your day, a part of your routine, for saying yes to me and the show. As always, if you see me, say hi. And if you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on Twitter at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing. Let me know how you living. Let me know how you momming them. And trust Who Dat Nation. I'll holla at you.